Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Poisonous People. Today, we're going to look at the question of whether or not there is such a thing as good gaslighting. And I don't believe this term good gaslighting has caught on just yet. I actually hope it never catches on because I personally believe that the term good gaslighting could probably create some confusion. Before we get into any of that, let's first come up with a definition of what good gaslighting would be. Good gaslighting would be the act of gaslighting for a good purpose, a benign purpose, something that actually benefits the gaslightee instead of harming them. So since there are no examples that I'm familiar with of what this could look like in the old school model or the modern day model of gaslighting, I'm going to give you two examples of what good gaslighting could look like. So when my grandmother was nearing the end of her life, she was 90 years old. She went into the hospital and the doctor told my family that she had approximately 6 weeks left to live. And my uncle made the decision not to tell her this. My uncle simply told her, hey, you're fine. You know, you're 90, so you're not going to be as healthy and up and at 'em as you normally are. But the doctor says you're fine. And the rest of the family followed suit, and we all told my grandmother, you're looking great, you've got a clean bill of health. Well, this actually turned out to be a great decision because my grandmother ended up living for an additional 6 months. And you can imagine how much anxiety we spared her by not telling her that she had 6 weeks to live. I mean, imagine that she hits week 6 and that whole week she's thinking, I'm dying, I'm dying, I'm dying. And then at week 7, she's going, okay, now I'm probably going to die for sure because I'm past 6 weeks. And every day after that, there's this added anxiety that is just not necessary for a woman her age who's probably already contemplating her mortality at the age of 90, and she's in so much pain, she doesn't need this added emotional burden. So I would say that that is an example of good gaslighting in the modern day model of gaslighting, that we didn't really do anything elaborate. We didn't really do anything to create the illusion. We just simply lied to her. Now, if you have been following along with this series, you know that old school gaslighting is much more elaborate and complex when compared with modern day gaslighting. Old school gaslighting has a lot of moving parts, and one of the most important features of old school gaslighting is something that I keep harping on, and that is what I call theatricality. It's setting the stage and actually creating the illusion that complements the lie so that the lie seems even more realistic. An example of good gaslighting in the old school model would be, let's say you have a small child who is not emotionally or psychologically ready to process the concept of death. I'm going to go with another death example. And let's say this child has a small pet like a goldfish or a hamster or something, and this pet dies, but the child wouldn't be able to process death. The child wouldn't be able to understand death. And so you kind of, direct this child's attention away from that fish tank or that small animal cage. You get the kid to school, and as soon as the kid goes to school, you go right to the pet store and you buy another pet that looks just like the first one. You put it in the cage, you put it in the fish tank, and you just pray that the kid doesn't notice. But kids can be very observant. And so when the child returns home from school, they look in the fish tank and they say, hey, this isn't Flipper. What happened to Flipper? And then you just lie and you say, of course that's Flipper. That's the same fish you've always had. This could be an example of good gaslighting in the old school model, because you didn't just lie to the kid, you actually went out and bought a new fish or whatever to create that illusion that everything is copacetic, nothing is different between the time that he woke up in the morning and came home from school. So regardless of whether or not you subscribe to one model over the other, the question is it really gaslighting if abuse has not occurred? If you remember back to the original video that I made for this series, the very first video examining the differences, the one thing they did have in common was that gaslighting is a form of psychological or emotional abuse. In the context that I've put these two examples, abuse is not happening. The argument would be that neither of these people were abused. In fact, the gaslighting was performed in order to protect these people from possible harm. So when we look at it that way, we could argue that no, gaslighting has not taken place because gaslighting is a type of abuse. And if gaslighting is a type of abuse, then it's impossible to claim that there is such a thing as good gaslighting. Now, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, if it isn't gaslighting, what do we call it? We have a lot of terms that are vastly different to illustrate the morality behind one's actions. So I'm going to give you an example. When we pair good adjectives with bad nouns, this creates cognitive dissonance. And so the way that we resolve that in our society is we simply have completely different terms. And so manipulation becomes persuasion. Same thing with the word murder. We don't go around saying good murder. We use the word euthanasia. Instead of being fired, we might say that somebody was laid off. So what term might be suitable to use in place of good gaslighting? Well, the term that I have chosen is convincing. In the past, I have always told people that when my grandmother was dying, we convinced her that she was in great health. We convinced her that she was fine. We've never said, oh, we gaslighted my grandmother into believing that she was perfectly fine or everything was going to be okay. We always use the word convincing. And so I personally choose this viewpoint that in the modern day model of gaslighting, as well as the old school model, I personally would say that while it's possible to perform certain activities and carry out certain behaviors that really look like gaslighting, because gaslighting is a form of abuse, it wouldn't actually be gaslighting at all. So I hope this helps you come to a determination on your own as far as whether or not you believe in the concept of good gaslighting, or if you think you would choose another term to describe this behavior, such as convincing. I'm Jen Guerriero, and this is Poisonous People. See you in the next video.